Humans have been questioning the world around us for as long as we've existed. It's natural to question what we're told and to wonder if there's anything else that's being hidden from us. While there are a few conspiracy theories over the years that have been proven true, these ones would be particularly disturbing if theory becomes reality. There's no shortage of celebrities to mention when we talk about Scientology. Scientology was founded by science fiction author L. Ron Hubbard in 1953. The church was founded on the principles of Dianetics. The full history behind Scientology is complex, but a summary of Dianetics is that deep down, humans are good and kind, but a series of traumatic events have shaped them into having certain psychological conditions. L. Ron Hubbard theorized that everything is connected back to the mind and soul, and explains it as what the soul is doing to the body. When the mind adversely affects the body, it is described as a psychosomatic condition. Psychosomatic illnesses are physical illnesses caused by the soul. These illnesses can be removed by a process called auditing, in which people are asked to give large donations in exchange for a very early form of psychotherapy. The auditor would walk them through a traumatic experience that they've had in an attempt to relieve them of it. The issue with this was that people began reporting traumas or abuse that never happened. Instead, the seed had been planted in their brain by the auditor. If you do a quick Google search of celebrities in Scientology, you'll come across an endless list of Hollywood stars who are involved in the New Age cult. One Reddit theory put forward by a user named Monson or Tickles states the following: the majority of celebrity Scientologists joined for networking purposes, but then found themselves in over their heads. As we know, Scientology is a huge religion and boasts around 500 million members worldwide. L. Ron Hubbard was a very influential and charismatic figure and was able to get his followers to do pretty much whatever he wanted. This theory seems plausible. What if actors joined as some sort of publicity stunt, or as a way to network with new people, but ended up getting in too deep? Many ex-members have come out and openly accused the church of harassment and bullying tactics in order to keep people within their confines. Once a person enters the Scientology headquarters in Riverside County, California, they are seldom seen leaving. Anyone who dares to speak out against Scientology is bombarded with harassment and stalked until they give up on the documentary or expose piece they are writing. A lot of celebrities have made financial contributions to the church, which the church calls donations. Perhaps these celebrities joined the church in an attempt to circumnavigate taxes, and they simply ended up being stuck in a cult. If you're living in the US, you're already very aware of the scandal surrounding the banning of TikTok. On the surface, TikTok appears to be a harmless video sharing app where content creators and fans can make cool, funny videos to their favorite music or their favorite quotes. Essentially, TikTok is like the new Vine, but with music and dancing. A Redditor by the name of On the Run from the FBI, who has since deleted their account, put forward a theory in February of 2020. The original comment, which also appears to have been deleted, says TikTok was created by the Chinese government to use as a data mine to collect millions of Western users' data and intentionally designed as a harmless social media app for teens and young adults on the surface. The Redditor was clearly ahead of their time in thinking that something was suspicious about TikTok. In recent news, many officials in the White House have made statements about how TikTok is dangerous and could be a way for the Chinese government to steal data. It's been alleged that TikTok, along with other Chinese-owned apps, is attempting to spread propaganda through the platform. Politicians and conspiracy theorists alike have claimed that the app is a project by the Chinese Communist Party to radicalize young people to go against the Western establishment. When asked about the matter, President Trump said in a briefing, "The spread in the United States of mobile applications developed and owned by companies in the People's Republic of China continues to threaten the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States." Is TikTok all a front to rally young people into having more extremist left-wing community views? Or is it hiding something much more sinister, like perhaps trying to mine data from the West in order to collapse their economy? Who knows? A Redditor by the name of Crazy Potatoes in a now archived Asked Reddit posted about the most bizarre conspiracy theory that's been brought to the attention of Reddit to date. In the post, they wrote, "Mattress Firm is some sort of giant money laundering scheme. They're everywhere and always empty. I remember seeing 4 mattress firms all on each corner of an intersection once. There's no way there's such a demand for mattresses. The poster then adds an edit to their post saying, "A few people seem confused. I'm talking about multiple of the same mattress store all in close proximity to each other. Not completely different mattress companies. Like if there are 4 different companies all next to each other, I get it, but these are the same company." The comments quickly poured in, with Redditors desperate to solve the mystery of Mattress Firm. Many people chimed in that the stores are most likely a front for some sort of white-collar crime, money laundering, tax evasion, etc. Others began commenting about this phenomenon and how it had popped up in their city too. People from all around the US shared their experiences of how these mattress firms seemingly popped up overnight, with multiple shops on the same street. While doing some digging, I found that Mattress Firm is owned by a parent company known as Steinhoff International, who's currently undergoing an investigation into money laundering. CEOs of Steinhoff International may be buying out these stores to make their books look more legitimate. Whether these stores are genuine or just a front remains to be seen. There is something suspicious happening at Mattress Firm, whether it's human trafficking, money laundering, or even related to the mafia. Let us know what you think. This next conspiracy is something a little different, but deserves to be explored nonetheless. In February of 2020, a user by the name of Naweezy posted the following theory. Crime in big tourist cities, like Los Angeles, is systematically underreported in order to not hurt business. Another user then commented, "I worked for the police in a major tourist city. I can confirm." After this, comments began pouring in of people sharing their experiences in large US tourist cities. A user by the name of Evidence of Sin commented, "As a kid visiting with my parents, we got held up at gunpoint on iDrive for my mother's purse. It was scary as an 11-year-old. Unfortunately, it had all of our passes in it and my dad's passport. You guys are very protective of tourism. We got all of our passes reissued with Fast Track, Discovery Cove, and a dolphin swim, all for free, all without asking for anything." While it's important to use your own discretion and judgment when reading through comments on the internet, it does seem strange that crimes against tourists never make the news. Las Vegas boasts a 1 in 164 chance of becoming a victim of violent crime, according to the website neighborhoodscout.com, and apparently is 11% safer than the average US city. It seems plausible, but with Las Vegas known for its strip centers and casinos and entertainment galore, you can't help but feel that this would be the perfect stalking ground for criminals looking to rob tourists and make some good money, especially when you factor in that alcohol flows freely and casinos are always open. Different websites will give different values, and of course the websites aimed at bringing in tourists put their minds at rest with reports of lower figures. In a report recently released by the FBI in 2018, there were 2,690 reported cases of robbery in Las Vegas, making it 163.6 per 100,000 people. The national average is 86 per 100,000 people. Of course, the companies and businesses located in these cities have a lot to lose if the public knew the truth about these statistics. Perhaps that's why tourists are compensated heavily and urged not to take charges further and go to the press. A video about conspiracy theories wouldn't be complete without talking about new ways that companies and possibly the government are tracking your every move and influencing your lifestyle choices. A user, known as Pious Thickness, put forward the following theory. The phasing out of the audio jack on mobile phones is to force customers to keep Bluetooth enabled as often as possible to enhance Bluetooth tracking in stores and malls so that they can sell that data onto advertisers. At first, the removal of the headphone jack looked like a way for companies to force people to buy Bluetooth accessories and gain them more sales by providing those accessories at a higher price. When you dig a little deeper though, it seems that this could be more than a marketing ploy by companies to get you to buy their $200 headphones. We already know that companies are tracking our every move through our mobile phones. Just take a look at Google Maps data, and it shows you everywhere you've been. We also know that companies are getting sneakier and sneakier at using targeted ads. Have you ever been scrolling through Facebook and seen an advertisement for a product you were thinking or even talking about buying? Well, Bluetooth beacons could be the answer as to how these companies know what you want. An article titled "Your Apps Know Where You Were Last Night and They're Not Keeping It a Secret," written by New York Times in December of 2018, goes into further detail about how companies are tracking you. The article breaks down how companies are placing Bluetooth beacons around their stores, which are able to connect to your device and communicate with apps that you have installed, giving them access to all sorts of personal information like your bank, shopping habits, and social media habits. These beacons can also apparently record which aisles you spend the longest time on and are extremely sensitive, tracking you from just centimeters away. Once they have that information of what a consumer likes to buy the most, they can sell that data on to other companies who can strategically place adverts throughout your social media, making it all the more likely you'll buy that t-shirt you wanted if you keep seeing it pop up everywhere you look. While there are many strange conspiracy theories about people who have red hair, there are some that are far more outlandish. Redheads are alien descendants is the conspiracy theory that some have come to suggest. It's been suggested that those with red hair are alien-human hybrids. The question was asked as to why several kings and queens in Europe had red hair, even though the percentage of redheads was extremely low and rare. It's been argued that these individuals have other biological differences aside from their hair color to those with blonde or brunette hair. Red-haired women are said to release vital fluid longer than others, which is why doctors have had to make special preparations for them if they're to give birth. They also have a lesser hair count at around 90,000, whereas blondes have around 110,000 and brunettes have 140,000. The individual strands of hairs, however, are much thicker, which makes their hair much easier to style. In addition to this, redheads don't go gray, but rather the color fades or wears over the years before turning white. There are various other health and biological related differences with these apparent aliens. One is that they require about 20% more anesthesia in order to be sedated. They also need a bit more local topical anesthetics such as lidocaine or novocaine. This is possibly the reason that those with red hair tend to be a lot more frightened of dentists, according to the American Dentistry Association. It was found that they require lower doses of things like opioids, and they can detect changes in hot and cold temperatures a lot easier than the average person. Studies have also revealed that they may be less sensitive to electric shocks, needle pricks, or stinging of the skin. It's these kinds of biological differences that have separated red-haired people from the rest of the world, and these factors were taken in by conspiracy theorists as evidence of their alien origins. Both of a redhead's parents have to pass over a recessive gene trait in order for the result to be red-colored hair. The child must inherit mutations in the melanocortin-1 receptor, or MC1R, on chromosome 16. MC1R is said to be responsible for making melanin, the skin pigment that redheads are unable to produce due to the mutation. It's this same gene that's responsible for midbrain function, which determines the response one has to pain. Studies have suggested that those who have red hair are able to tolerate more of a certain type of pain, but less of other types, further supporting the idea that they may be some sort of alien hybrid. Because the gene affects the human body systematically, the mutation may indicate other differences in redheads. The mutation causes them to be more at risk of sunburn, and it's due to this sensitivity that they're able to produce more vitamin D. While this may be an advantage, there are some disadvantages to this, including the higher risk of melanoma development. It was also found in some studies that redheads are considered to be more attractive to some individuals. Theorists suggest that this is another alien effect, as extraterrestrials generally take on a more attractive appearance during their visitations. Gingers are actually part alien. This is the caption that was left by a Reddit user 6 years ago on the subreddit Conspiracy, where the poster proceeded to explain the legend of Star Crash by Dolores Cannon. The book is listed as Religion and Spirituality, and is said to describe the account of a woman who transferred into the life of a man that was named Tuan, who was a hunter living in the Canadian-Alaskan area. Tuan had been a tribe member who thought he was one of the only people on Earth. The man would detail the history of his people, and state that his people had been descendants of the Old Ones who had journeyed across space and crash-landed within the area many years prior. The story says that 200 years prior, a UFO had crashed a few miles away from a village, and the creatures that came out of it had been tall and slender, with pale skin and dark blue hair. Their bodies were not acclimated to the sun's radiation. The aliens had been traveling through space in search of a new home when they experienced a mechanical failure. After coming to realize that they couldn't produce their own offspring on Earth, they decided to keep their species alive with the use of Earth dwellers that had been dark-haired and dark-skinned people. The mutation would result in these red-haired hybrids who would continue to produce offspring, resulting in what's now believed to be the red-headed alien hybrid descendants. In addition to this, an article found on a message board titled "Are Redheads DNA of Alien Origin?" detailed the following, saying another race that was said to have branched off from a giant race was the red-haired Lyrans. The Lyrans' hair would change from red to strawberry blonde, and their skin was fair, which would make it difficult for them to expose their delicate skin to natural light. Their eyes had also generally been green, much like most red-haired individuals today. Lyrans are well known within UFO circles, and are usually seen as being red-haired. The message would go on to make a link between the Lyrans and the redheads of planet Earth, stating that the entities still exist, but they're fewer in numbers. It accounted for the closest mythological remnants of the Lyrans being present in Norse mythology, the Vikings. Some of this mythology was about real Earth beings that were influenced by Lyrans with red hair. It was not a common interaction, but happened enough to have been inserted into mythology. It's based off of stories and mythologies, as well as discrimination, that's led to the belief and conspiracy theories that state that redheads of the Earth had come from aliens, or are the descendants of extraterrestrial beings. But the biological differences between blondes, brunettes, and redheads all have a scientific explanation, such as the difference in chromosomes and mutated genes. Julius Caesar and Cleopatra created Jesus Christ. At least that's what the theorists have suggested. It's believed that Jesus is based off of Caesarion, the son of Caesar and Cleopatra. Jesus was the last Egyptian pharaoh, as some have come to suggest. It's theorized that he was born under a different name, an Egyptian name of Ptolemy 15 Caesar, and the Roman name Caesarion, which translates to Little Caesar. As the name may suggest, he was the result of both Caesar and Cleopatra 7 Philopato. Cleopatra was said to be associated with the goddess of Isis, while Caesar was the emperor of the Roman Empire. Caesarion was the heir and successor of both Egyptian and Roman empires, making him the king of kings as well as the son of God, the equivalent of Isis, as theories have found. After his father was assassinated and the pharaoh era came to an end, the boy would flee to Tibet, where he allegedly studied under Tibetan monks. At the age of 37 years old, even though it was said that he met his demise at the age of 17, he then returned to Rome along with his court and rode a donkey with nothing other than his status. Upon his arrival, rumors began to spread, stating that Caesarion had been the uncrowned king, which was not taken kindly by the ruler of Rome, which would lead to the Egyptian Jesus' demise, just like how he was crucified in the Bible. The leader would eliminate the threat of the apparent Jesus taking the throne. In addition to this, theorists also alluded to what Christians say at the end of each prayer, Amen. They suggest that the correct pronunciation is actually Amun, from the Egyptian god Amun-Ra. This is only a bit of the story of the various different ones associated with this conspiracy. A subreddit called Bad History was subjected to a post regarding this theory, which set off a sentence stating that Jesus is Ptolemy Caesar and Christianity is Romano-Egyptian shame. It was also suggested here that after Caesar was assassinated, Cleopatra would exile her son in order to conceal his identity as the successor to the crown, purely to ensure his safety. But it's suggested here that she actually did not exile him, but rather raised him as her co-regent. Caesar had never addressed his son publicly and is thought to have skirted around the issue, as well as left Caesarion out of his will. And it was even said that Caesar repudiated his son from the will, but it's not mentioned in other accounts aside from that of Nicholas of Damascus. It's then alleged that Caesar's son was placed under the care of his adopted parents, Mary and Joseph. He would then go to India, where he studied Vedic texts under Brahmin priests. Later, he would return to Alexandria, Egypt, betraying those who had taught him. Caesarion would recapture the Egyptian empire that was not the Holy Roman Empire with the name Jesus Christ. Jesus is said to be the name Esau in Egyptian, meaning son of Isis. Cleopatra was the virgin goddess Isis, as she self-proclaimed, and Caesar had been worshipped as a god, resulting in the theory that Caesarion was the son of a virgin, as well as a god, making him Jesus. It's known that both Jesus and Caesarion had lived during the same time period during the transition from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire, and are known to have had connections to this empire. While Jesus is believed to be the son of a virgin and the Holy Spirit, Caesarion was found to be the result of an alleged virgin goddess, and a man who was praised as a god. The son of Caesar was the last pharaoh of Egypt, and Jesus was said to be a Messiah. Caesarion had lost his life after Egypt had fallen to Octavian, while Jesus had too met his demise through crucifixion. This was not the only connection that theorists believe Jesus of the Bible had with Egypt. Various similarities have been found between him and Horus, an Egyptian god. Horus's story had been written more than 5,000 years ago. He was born of the virgin Isis, while Jesus, whose story came 2,000 years ago, was born of Mary. Both have their birthdays celebrated on the 25th of December. An eastern star had led the wise men to Horus, and a north star had led the wise men to Jesus. There's a lengthy list of similarities between the two, which appear far more than that of Caesarion and Jesus. The conspiracy theory that Jesus was based on the son of Caesar and Cleopatra disturbed many around the world. Outlandish connections were made between the two, but thorough research did reveal that Cleopatra had considered herself, as previously stated, as the goddess Isis. But in addition to that, she also thought that Caesarion was the incarnation of the Egyptian god Horus, which is where parallels can now be drawn between Caesarion and Jesus, since Horus and the Son of God both have similarities. Both of the individuals were said to be taken to Egypt to escape dangers, and had been taught in temples as children, as mentioned with Caesarion previously, who is believed to have studied under monks as well as priests. Additionally, Caesarion was said to have returned to Rome with his court, which could perhaps refer to the 12 disciples of Horus, as well as the 12 disciples of Jesus. Their baptisms happened at the same age, and they could perform miracles, including walking on water. Horus and Jesus were each crucified, buried in a tomb, and later resurrected. A linkage was made between all three of the similar individuals, Jesus, Horus, and Caesarion. But it is, however, noted that Caesarion had met his demise at the age of 17. But it's later said that he returned to the Mediterranean 17 years later, and his name changed to Jesus Christ after taking the initials of his father, JC. In addition to this, another connection can be made. It's been said that there's a whole 17 years missing from Jesus' life in the Bible. Nicholas Notovich released a book titled The Unknown Life of Christ in 1894, stating evidence that suggests where he was during his missing 17 years. This conspiracy theory is subject to much controversy, but some have theorized and maintained that Caesarion is Jesus. The only thing that cannot be explained is the thousands upon thousands of eyewitness accounts of Jesus. Those simply don't exist for Horus or Caesarion. Peter Davenport Fuller had been an American auto dealer and racehorse owner. It's said that he'd been born with an intestinal disease that had stunted his growth, but recovered at the age of 10. He additionally partakes in the boxing sport, along with horse racing. Fuller was a New England car dealer who'd won the 1968 Kentucky Derby. On this day, the racer was riding Dancer's Image, who won the race, but then didn't. Dancer's Image and Peter Fuller were disqualified after traces of a prohibited pain reliever were found in the horse's system. Peter would later pass away at the age of 89 years old due to an illness. Dancer's Image, a thoroughbred horse, was the son of Native Dancer. He would race only once more after the Kentucky Derby, where he would cross the wire third in Preakness Stakes. Unfortunately, he was again taken down for alleged interference. Dancer's Image had been in the process of training for the Belmont Stakes, but an unfortunate ankle injury ultimately ended his career right before the race. Fuller would take the horse back to the Runnymede farm in Northampton until stud plans could be solidified. 5 months later, after the eventfulness in the Triple Crown, Fuller announced that the horse would debut a stud at Glade Valley Farm for the breeding season of 1969. Fuller expressed that Dancer's Image was syndicated for $2 million with 32 shares and was advertised for a fee of $12,000. Breeders had responded almost instantly for the would-have-been Derby winner. The conspiracy theory here involves the reason for disqualification in the 1968 Kentucky Derby. Fuller denied knowing that the horse had this medication in his system, and theories began to fly. There's one sure thing about the Kentucky Derby, and that's that Dancer's image had crossed the finish line first. There's a lot more to the story, but each detail leads us down a road that ultimately leaves us with a mystery. None of Dancer's image and Fuller's fans believed that the race, nor the trainer, Lou Cavalaris, would sabotage the horse or the race. These two individuals had no hint of scandal within the entirety of their careers before or after the Derby. No one believed that either of them had conspired to do such a thing in order for the horse to win. This leaves the question as to how the medication had found its way into the cult system. Perhaps the disqualification had been the result of a botched test. Since so much time has elapsed, with the story being buried, it's likely that we may never know the answer as to what exactly happened at this Derby. After a race at Wood Memorial, the horse had some ankle problems, and so Fuller would receive advice from a trainer named Odie Cleland to stable Dancer's image at a well-known veterinarian stable, Alex Harthill. He was said to be a talented yet controversial vet and was rather influential. Harthill was also known as Derby Doc, and it didn't come as a surprise when he was brought up in the issue of the disqualified racers. He was known to have treated 26 of the Kentucky Derby winners, including Dancer's image. It was acknowledged that he'd given the horse a shot of bute 6 days prior to the race, but that would have given plenty of time for it to have worked out of his system. Those 6 days also appeared to be routine. The racing horse was in top form for the event and sent off at 7-2 in the wagering. He crossed the finish line about 1.5 lengths in front of Calumet Farms' forward pass. When the results of the test came back positive, Fuller was staggered, but he pushed back and even took the matter to court. He too believed that the test had been botched and that Dancer's image had no trace of this medication in his system. One popular theory of this case is that the disqualification had been an act of revenge on the racer, who was a liberal and New Englander, as well as a civil rights advocate. It had been earlier that year in the governor's purse at Bowie that Dancer's image had won. The proceeds would then be donated by Fuller to the widow of Martin Luther King Jr., who'd been assassinated that same year in April. According to Abby Fuller, after the donation was made, the racer would receive threatening letters. It was theorized that this is what caused the horse to be sabotaged. Some, however, did not buy into such a conspiracy and suggested an alternative one. During this time, J. Edgar Hoover had been fighting against Martin Luther King Jr., while everyone had supported him. It's inserted that it would be rather interesting to see if there are any files belonging to the FBI relating to Peter Fuller that were kept by Hoover. As previously mentioned, Dancer's image raced once again, but was disqualified again for bumping into another horse. It was also theorized that this had something to do with the conspiracy theories. It appeared that some were out to destroy Fuller's career and ensure that he never won another Derby. Theorists have suggested exactly this, but the mystery will never be proven after having been buried over the years. It's theorized that it was Dr. Alex who had sabotaged the horse. Some believe that he is the true villain in the story. It was in Harthill's obituary that author Marty McGee would detail the controversial aspect of his career. In the Daily Racing Form, McGee had stated the following, saying, quote, "Although his legacy as a practicing veterinarian was sealed early, Harthill quickly became synonymous with controversy and seemed to live on the edge of racing legality." He would go on to say that Harthill was under intense speculation for the disqualification of Dancer's image, and in the 1950s he'd been arrested in Louisiana after having bribed a testing lab employee. Harthill would be found to be the central figure in various racetrack controversies, as well as court cases in Kentucky and various other places. Another question comes into play. What was Harthill's motivation if he did treat Dancer's image with bute within a short time period before the race? It was found that he treated each of Calumet's horses all the way back to Citation, and had treated Forward Pass as well, who'd been a favorite for hard boots that year. A reporter was sent to Churchill's backstretch after the disqualification. It was here that a reporter would be confronted by Harthill, who got him on the ground and proceeded to question him, asking him if he'd been looking into the gambling coup of Caliente. The reporter had not heard of the book at this time, and so he'd gone to Mexico to investigate if there had been some unusual betting in this Derby winter book, but could not find any such evidence. It was events such as these that would place the veterinarian into the limelight of suspicion. But unfortunately, nothing could be proven, and it was all left up to conspiracy. Dancer's image would later pass away in Japan in 1992, and Fuller never recovered from the disqualifications that he endured. Mattresses and money laundering are two very different subjects, but they seem to be tied into a strange conspiracy theory that's thought to have begun on a subreddit after a Redditor had brought to the community's attention that there was a very high concentration of Mattress Firm stores in various areas across the United States, specifically in Chicago. Other users immediately began to share thousands of images and maps that show the locations of these stores within 5 miles of one another, or even right across the road. This ultimately led to the theory that the company was a front for a money laundering business or other organized crime. This conspiracy is not at all recent, but a rather long-standing one that was refreshed after the accusations made on Reddit. A user named Crazy Potatoes stated that Mattress Firm is just one large money laundering scheme, while a deleted user expressed having seen 4 of these stores located on each corner of an intersection, inserting that there's no way that there's such high demand for mattresses. It was found that there are 5 Mattress Firm branches located within just 1 mile of one another in Cherville, Indiana. The then CEO, Ken Murphy, denied such rumors, saying that the idea that the locations and proximity of the stores are related to money laundering or other illegal activities are entirely false. A Reddit user explained the situation and received various comments, one of which is that their office is close to 2 mattress stores. The user stated that they hardly ever see anyone in there, no matter what day of the week it is. Replying to this comment was Strider3141, who asked if they'd ever been in a mattress store and how the employees acted as though they'd never seen a real-life person before. Mattress Firm is said to be one of the largest mattress retailers worldwide. It's questioned as to why there are such a high number of these stores, the distance between them, and who's buying the mattresses. Money laundering refers to an illegal process where a company or organization makes a large amount of money through some sort of criminal activity that appears to have come from a legitimate source. The money that's generated through this is known as dirty, and the process that launders it makes it usable or clean. For such illegal organizations, money laundering allows them to make use of their gains by introducing the cash from legitimate financial systems, such as through various mattress store fronts. Mattress Firm is said to have acquired other rivals throughout the years and expanded its stores from around 3,200 to 3,600 across the US. In September of 2016, the firm was acquired by Steinhoff, which is a South African retail combination that also owns UK discounter Poundland. Steinhoff, as theorists have pointed out, is being mired in an accounting scandal. This came after auditors had found some irregularities in its finances around the end of 2017. Theorists suggest that this is further evidence that there are some wrongdoings going on within Mattress Firm. It's indicated, though, that the company's profit margin is in line with its competitors, which may indicate that it's a legitimate business, or that the competitors are also involved in money laundering schemes. Mattress Firm's gross margin was 27% in February of 2016, and its operating margin was around 6% after 24% of revenues was spent on sales and marketing. A competing mattress firm found a gross margin of almost 62% in 2016, but high sales as well as expenses meant that the operating margin had also been within the range of 6%. Mattress Firm allegedly makes less of a revenue per store than its rival firm. It's been suggested against the conspiracy theory that if it were involved in a money laundering scheme, then one should expect an outperformance. However, it can be argued that the low revenue has been done intentionally to throw off conspiracies. Money laundering generally involves 3 steps from placement of the dirty money into a legitimate system. Then the money will then be layered through bookkeeping tricks, and then the laundered money will be withdrawn to be used freely. Redditors and conspiracy theorists grew suspicious of the firm due to the number of stores situated across the US, arguing that mattresses are a product that's bought every 7 to 10 years. Additionally, nowadays, such purchases are done online. So why is there a need for so many mattress stores? And this is a question that's been centered in this conspiracy theory. Ken Murphy explained that the stores have been placed in convenient locations in high-traffic areas, which he claims keeps this company at the top of their minds when it comes to buying a new mattress. What furthers this conspiracy is that in the last few years, the company has been on an investment spree, as well as having acquired numerous rivals, including Sleepy's and Sleep Train. A Reddit user had also commented that the more stores there are, the more places there will be to shuffle the money. The firm is also said to have filed a lawsuit against real estate executives, an external broker, as well as developers, accusing them of fraud, kickbacks, as well as bribery. In addition to Steinhoff's purchase, the South African retailer purchased the business for $3.8 billion, a price that would bewilder analysts because the mattress industry was threatened at the time after popular startups such as Casper came onto the scene. In addition to being mired in an accounting scandal, Steinhoff has had other issues such as a 62% drop in stock prices, and as a result, 2 executives and a chairman resigned. The retailer further faces a money laundering probe from the government of South Africa, which theorists have taken in as evidence. In 2018, Mattress Firm would go on to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy before forcing them to close 700 of their stores. With the rise of companies such as Casper, Mattress Firm began finding it harder to compete. Casper had sold $100 million worth of mattresses through limiting consumer choice. Mattress Firm has, however, stated that they won't be pursuing liquidation sales, but will be restructuring their business to provide a greater service to customers, open new stores, and better the product that they're offering. Theorists maintain that this restructuring may still involve some sort of money laundering scheme, but in a better way that may allow them to clean more of the dirty money. Added to UNESCO's World Heritage List in the year 2000, the Tiwanaku ruins were once the intricate buildings made by the pre-Columbian civilization of the same name. These ruins can be found in Bolivia, close to the southern shore of Lake Titicaca. The site is also within the proximity of Pumapunku. It's thought that Tiwanaku may be an earlier creation than Pumapunku. Scholars have dated the most recent of the remains to the earliest of the early intermediate period, 200 BC to 200 CE. Others believe that the site dates to the latter half of the period between 200 CE and 600. But some of the site construction must have continued sometime into the Middle Horizon from 600 to 1000, as Tiwanaku influences can be seen at Hauri and in other regions of the central as well as southern Andes. The primary buildings present at the site include the Akapana Pyramid, which is a large platform mound of earth that's been faced with cut andesite. There's also the rectangular enclosure that was called Kalisasaya, which alternated between tall columns and rectangular blocks. It was not only the Egyptian pyramids, Stonehenge, or Pumapunku that had been subjected to the stories of alien overlords appearing to these ancient civilizations and giving them the knowledge and power to build such intricate creations. Tiwanaku has also become part of this alien conspiracy. This empire made the list of ancient buildings that were definitely built by aliens. The empire had collapsed in 1200 AD before being followed by the Incan Empire. There's a lot of this site that's yet to be uncovered, with some ruins protruding from the earth. These protrusions had made it clear that this was a large city that was complete with temples, gates, pyramids, and neighborhoods. It's not so much the intricate designs and megalithic builds that have grabbed the attention of the alien conspirators, but rather the strange statues and carvings of what theorists believe depict alien beings. For ages, it's been theorized that the advanced ancient civilizations had worshipped or had contact with extraterrestrials, and that theory does not escape Tiwanaku. Biologists have argued that the alien faces, though, are rather of humans, or maybe even gods, that the civilization worshipped. It's around the temples where intriguing artifacts have been discovered. Artifacts that exhibited extended faces that were each shaped differently. It's said that we can see the heads of Asians, Peruvians, and others that seem to have an otherworldly origin, according to theorists. It's these carvings that have reminded the alien community of extraterrestrials such as the Greys. The site is in a state of disrepair, even by the standards of ancient ruins. The culture had collapsed under circumstances that are unknown around 1000 AD. Thereafter, the remaining temples and buildings would be raided for building materials. Tiwanaku would also be defaced by the Spanish, sparked by Christianity. They would take out tons of blocks to be used to build a church in a nearby village. The faces that can be found on some of the remaining ruins are also thought to be of rulers or even priests. Their creations were carved out of stone and placed in a subterranean temple thought to be for fertility. Some scholars brought about the idea that the faces had been precise evidence that the achievements in architecture, culture, and agriculture had been the result of the extraterrestrial visit to Earth. These conspiracies suggest that the ancient Andes could not have done or achieved any of this alone, and so they carved the likeness of these extraterrestrials into their temples in an act of worship for the all-knowing beings. These ideas have been around since the Spanish had initially found the ruined empire in the 1500s. It's been proposed continuously that the empire had been the words of Marians from India, Atlanteans, or lost Egyptians. Many individuals, including those of modern days, advocate for the belief that Tiwanaku had been the product of aliens. These theories are due to the suggestion that these kinds of buildings defy the expectations of these individuals. They believe that anyone outside of the classical world would not have been able to accomplish such intricate and immense creations. Theorists see that the involvement in building such a site done by an alien race is more plausible than it being done by an ancient civilization. This theory is one that ties in with the ancient astronaut theory. There have been various accounts of supposed evidence relating to these ancient astronauts, ranging from similar megalithic builds to cave paintings that are believed to depict an ancient alien race that came to Earth and gave the civilization the knowledge to create these designs. Ancient astronauts are referred to by various terms such as ancient aliens, ancient UFO-nauts, or ancient space pilots. Some conspiracy theorists hold the belief that these faces and heads depicted at Tiwanaku are those of ancient astronauts who appeared to them at one point, sparking off their various megalithic builds that we see today. In the later part of the 20th century, archaeologists had discovered new information about the World Heritage Site. It was formerly believed that Tiwanaku was a ceremonial site, but it's since revealed that it was perhaps once a metropolis, yet very little is known about it, which is possibly how the extraterrestrials would have wanted it. While it's believed among experts that the faces are no more than the faces of people and depictions of gods, some of them seem to resemble the look of gray aliens. One of these faces has an enlarged forehead and exaggerated eyes, which fits in with the concept of the gray aliens. Another seemed to resemble the Easter Islands heads, or the Olmec colossal heads. This further supported the theory that these ancient astronauts had appeared to various other civilizations, not just the Tiwanaku, who each depicted them in their own way. What makes this site even more strange is the mysterious circumstances under which the Tiwanaku civilization had disappeared. Some archaeologists argue that the decline had been due to some drastic weather changes, but it's found that the culture had continued and is theorized to have become the basis of the beliefs of the Incas, who had inhabited the area shortly after. The Incas did not believe that there had been a civilization there previously, but rather that the site was where the god Viracocha had made the first humans, and so the civilization would go on to build their own structures alongside the ones that were built previously by the Tiwanaku. Furthermore, what's strange about these faces, assuming that they are the depictions of gods or priests or rulers, is that they're positioned fairly low down instead of higher up. It was found that in such civilizations, these depictions would often be placed in a higher area where they would be constantly visible. This theory makes it unlikely that the faces were that of gods or entities of high regard. The faces would also appear somewhat disorderly, further fueling the various alien conspiracies that surround such ancient sites. In the last 100 years, America's technological advancements have increased greatly. Today, pretty much everyone has a cell phone, laptop, smartwatch, and more. While this gives consumers a connection to social media and educational materials, it provides an open window for hackers, identity theft, and terrorists. Conspiracy theories related to consumer data offer a variety of terrifying possibilities. The most common concerns, though, are that the US government infringes on the population's privacy for whatever reason. It's difficult to imagine that the average person would have data enough for the government to collect, but it's argued that the data is collected as a means to monitor and maintain control of the population. In recent years, shocking news has come out covering the NSA's use of consumer data and information. This left many Americans feeling unsafe about their privacy. With this new fear comes new theories. One standing theory that was first speculated more than a decade ago points guilt at Area 51. Since the late 1950s, Area 51 was the source of much controversy and speculation. In fact, a few decades ago, the government would not even admit publicly that the base existed. However, evidence and research was able to confirm that some kind of facility or program was being run in the area. Finally, not too long ago, the government did admit that Area 51 was real. Similarly, when the base was still a secret, extreme precautions were taken to conceal the location and any information related to it. After coming public and releasing declassified documents, the public demanded even more answers. Those strict security practices are still in place today, though they've made finding the truth fairly hard. Alleged former employees have come forward to share their experiences and information about the base. Unfortunately, many of these employees worked at the base anywhere from the 50s to the 80s, so much of the information provided is dated and can't offer new knowledge or secrets. The quotes of these employees are still important. One anonymous employee explained that during his time at the site, he witnessed several equipment setups, files, and exercises that infringed upon Americans' privacy. Apparently, Area 51 was working to intercept phone and web signals across the country, collecting the data that it found. Very little detail was provided about the process or purpose of this work, so much of this is just theories. Some assume that the data was being collected and then reviewed to spot any unusual activity that may have threatened Americans. Others believe that the data was collected as a means to monitor and study the average person, a project that would later help the government control its citizens. There's no way to confirm this theory or the employees' claims at this time, and it still remains a mystery. This one is less of a theory and more of a fact, but there's still some controversial sub-theories that spawn from it. In 1990, former Area 51 employees began filing lawsuits against the US government because they'd fallen ill after being exposed to gas, chemicals, and other dangerous elements at Area 51. This movement, involving many employees, is what ultimately caused the government to admit that the base existed. Workers suffered from serious illnesses such as breathing diseases, heart conditions, cancers, and more. The consensus was that the ailments were caused by exposure on the job. In detailed reports and documents, workers described the situations in which they were directly exposed to fumes from the burning of toxic chemicals. While working on an airbase near engines and beta weapons, you could expect a certain level of toxic things. This was different though, because base officials allegedly ignored protocols that would have allowed the chemicals to be disposed of safely. Instead, officials would just dig trenches miles long, fill them with toxic materials and general waste, and then set them ablaze. This caused massive smoke clouds and debris to spread across the base, according to employees. Additionally, some other toxic chemicals were just thrown into the everyday trash, which would later be handled by guards or cleaners. Former workers said that the government was happy about the alien and UFO theories floating around because it distracted the public from the real secrets, one of which was the clear malpractice in disposing of toxic waste. It's easy to see why officials would be so devoted to keeping Area 51 under wraps, because no one would believe the true horrors that were going on. Again, these cases actually occurred and they're seen as facts now. Still, these theories make room for a dangerous new genre of conspiracy theory. Clearly, Area 51 was exposing lower-level employees to dangerous fumes and objects, but the exact reason why is debatable. Most think the reason was about efficiency and that the fumes were the result of officials trying to save time by cutting corners, or being lazy with no regard to the victims. Others, however, theorize that the fumes were emitted that way on purpose, despite safety protocol, to harm employees. It'd be ridiculous to purposely expose your own employees to unhealthy conditions, but if every employee fell ill or died within a few years of losing their job, they couldn't share any secrets, and this would be seen as a convenient way to keep all of those secrets. To put it simply, it's theorized that the employees were intentionally exposed to danger in hopes that they would take the secrets of the base to their grave. The aspect that makes this theory likely to be true is when former employees began hiring lawyers and going public with their statements. Many of them were hunted down by FBI officials and members of the CIA. In some cases, the victims reported being tracked down and interrogated by these officers who would also try to convince them not to go public. In a few cases, lawyers had to meet with their clients in different hotel rooms throughout the week as they were trying to avoid the hammer of the government. Why would officers go to such extreme measures over a healthcare lawsuit? It suggests that they were really invested in keeping secrets and silencing these employees. Much like the theory that Area 51 was intentionally poisoning their employees, this subject includes a theory about how projects at Area 51 revolved around poisonous gases and the public. Thanks to the reports of toxic waste and materials being burned off in massive quantities, a theory that the government is using Area 51 for population control tactics was born. The theory suggests that Area 51 isn't just an Air Force base, but it's a location where fatal chemicals such as tear gas and poisonous air are studied for their potential to harm citizens when released. According to the theory, Area 51 creates and tests deadly methods to decrease and maintain the population. For decades, it's been widely believed that America, as well as the rest of the world, is being overpopulated. The number of living humans is beginning to outweigh each nation's ability to provide for their citizens and keep streets safe. Allegedly, employees were originally exposed to such threats and were used as non-consenting test subjects to see the effects, both long and short, of poisonous methods. Of course, we know that many exposed employees still live up to 20 years after exposure, but in theory, this was caused by the first attempts being less successful. It's believed that since that period, Area 51 researchers have concocted ways of making the efforts more instant and fatal. If they were able to create their desired cocktails, they would then wait until it was absolutely necessary and release them. This release would occur in crowded areas of the country or on a larger scale to knock out millions at a time. If many people fell victim to these efforts, the population would decrease significantly and improve the government's control. Similarly, it's hypothesized that these toxins would not be released on American citizens, and that they'd be used against enemy countries in times of war. Considering specific laws of war that every country should abide by, it's easy to see why the government would keep this as a secret. In history, America has participated in wars that were controversial and led to protest. If the public knew that America was using chemicals or toxic waste to win a war, the public's response may not be so positive. Another great reason to keep these plans undercover. This theory and many of its subpoints could be easily disputed, seeing as there's no real evidence. Furthermore, some argue that if the government had these tactics, they would have been implemented already. The same facts help argue that this conspiracy theory could be true, though. A lack of evidence doesn't necessarily dismiss this theory, but instead leaves an open window. After all, how can we dismiss anything if we know pretty much nothing? Area 51 has been shrouded in mystery for so long that millions of theories have been proposed, but some state a stronger case than others. One of the most common conspiracy theories concerning Area 51 is the presence of alien life and technology. There's little to no reliable proof about these assumptions, but they've opened the door to other more likely hypotheses. Some believe that the base is a storage and research ground for advanced and dangerous technology that most people are unaware of. For example, Area 51 may be hiding a time machine in theory. Throughout history, and especially at present time, photos have circulated that suggest the existence of time travel. Nowadays, most evidence of these doctored photos or personal accounts cannot be confirmed. Still, the evidence that does allegedly exist leads citizens to insist that time travel is real and has already been discovered. And what better place for a time machine to hide than one of the most secret locations on Earth? In theory, Area 51's research and technology lead them to discover either the process of time travel or abandoned time machines. Sitting underground on top of a secret, heavily secured location, there could be a working time machine. The big pitfall for this theory, though, is that what would Area 51 use this machine for? Sure, they could go back in time and change certain events in America's favor, but as we know, many flaws and harms still mark the nation's history. Subtheories that branch off of this one suggest that the time machines aren't likely major pieces of technology being housed in Area 51. The list of other popular items or concepts is immeasurable, but it includes advanced weapons that would be considered too dangerous in combat, weapons and technology designed to fight against alien invasions, devices that could be used against the human mind to gain control, erase memories, or read thoughts, a cure to cancer or other severe illnesses, and much, much more. The credibility and likelihood of each item varies, but if they were to exist, it's clear why the government would want to hide each and every one of them. A surprising amount of people believe the theory that nothing is at Area 51. While it may sound like the strangest theory so far, it's a solid case and most probable. It's completely possible that Area 51 is not an Air Force base. It doesn't test weapons, it doesn't emit toxic waste fumes, and it doesn't work on anything related to other theories or claims. As was mentioned by a former employee of Area 51, many officials agreed that the alien and UFO mania was a positive thing for the base, as it distracted curious citizens from the real truth hiding at the base. The concept is used here, stating that Area 51 is a complex cover for another location or other secret locations. Almost immediately after it was purchased and renovated, Area 51 sparked attention. Despite a public statement never being released, citizens became somehow aware of a secret base. It's unclear where this knowledge originated, but thanks to word of mouth and a few UFO sightings, the location's popularity took off. For this theory, we can speculate that someone purposefully exposed the existence of the base to the average people, and then also spread the news. Eventually, the story got twisted and theories got formed, which helped the fire grow. If America wanted to hide something much more important, the best way would be to distract the public. If distraction was the goal of Area 51, then it was a complete success. You may be wondering about photos or declassified files that were released, and according to those theories, those items were staged to provide material evidence that Area 51 existed without having to compose a story in too much detail. The government had already described the site as an Air Force base, a clear lie used to encourage curiosity, so showing pilots and aircrafts in photos was a lie that played into both plots. The plot where Area 51 was just a cover-up, and the resulting plot that the government was lying about its true purpose. As for the former employees that fell ill and gave statements, these could have been individuals sought out and paid by the CIA to keep a charade of Area 51. Additionally, in the 1990s, when these employees went public, it was 40 years after Area 51 was secured. These reports could have been a publicity stunt to reignite the dwindling attention of the population and provide the right amount of information to keep theorists digging into a bottomless pit. Consider all of the commotion and speculation that's always surrounded Area 51. Creating a useless base just to stir controversy would be a brilliant way to minimize the possibility of the true secret locations being discovered. As usual, we can't confirm this theory or any other, but we can conclude that it doesn't seem like an outrageous stretch. One of the biggest conspiracy theories around today is that life from other planets exists on Earth right now. These alien creatures either fly above us, live in the seas, or literally live among us, blending in with ordinary humans. But one more scientifically minded theory is that these aliens wouldn't look like humans at all, or even be humanoid. They're actually octopuses. Octopuses are some of the strangest animals on planet Earth. It's easy to see why they and their close relatives, the squid, have inspired stories of sea monsters for centuries. Other than the stereotypical gray alien, octopus-like aliens are possibly the most common in science fiction, such as the Martians from War of the Worlds, and may actually be the more realistic interpretation of what life on other planets might look like. Beyond their strange appearance, there are many other creepy aspects of the octopus. For instance, they have the highest brain-to-body ratio of any invertebrate, are the only invertebrates known to use tools, and have a camouflage ability unlike anything else on the planet. And all the octopus's weird features appeared suddenly in the fossil record. According to the conventional understanding of the evolution of octopuses, octopuses evolved from snail-like creatures with shells. However, early in the Cambrian explosion, octopuses dropped their shells and suddenly evolved the strange features they're known for today. And then that sudden evolution stopped. Octopuses have a very complex biology. When scientists mapped out the genomes of octopuses, they found that octopuses have 33,000 protein coding genes. That's roughly 13,000 more than humans do. This makes the genome very complex, which should have led to many mutations during the past 100 million years, but that wasn't the case for octopuses. There's been very little change in their DNA over that time. That may be because octopuses don't need genetic mutations in the same way most animals do, but consciously give their RNA instructions to immediately alter their DNA. There are ways to explain this through our traditional understanding of how evolution may work, but some believe there's a much simpler explanation. In 2018, 33 scientists published a paper that came to the conclusion that octopuses arrived here from outer space. Octopus eggs may have been on a meteorite that collided with Earth millions of years ago. Those eggs managed to survive the cold of space and found that the warm waters of primordial Earth were the perfect habitat for them. Another theory is that it was a virus that crashed into the Earth, which was able to quickly turn early cephalopods into what we know today. The paper was criticized by most of the scientific community, but the creepy theory that aliens came from outer space is still alive for some people. Project Bluebeam is one of many conspiracy theories that concern the New World Order, a secret world government that aims to control everyone on the planet. What makes Bluebeam so creepy is just how this organization plans on getting control. The conspiracy theory started with a man named Sergei Monast. Monast was a Canadian investigative journalist who focused on conspiracy theories. In 1994, he published the book Project Bluebeam, which outlined the strange theory. It wasn't Monast's first book about a conspiracy theory that he claimed to be real, and it wouldn't be the last. According to Monast, Project Bluebeam was a scheme run by NASA and the United Nations, working with the New World Order and the Antichrist. It had a number of stages, with the goal of creating a population that's easily manipulated and desperate for their chosen hero to take control. The project starts with a series of earthquakes in various locations around the world. These sites would be targeted specifically due to their archaeological and religious significance. The earthquakes would destroy evidence of past civilizations and their relationship with whatever gods they worship. The New World Order would then plant new evidence, which would prove that our ancient ancestors worshipped the same being that the conspirators wanted us to worship today. The next stage would be the most dramatic. With the seeds of this new religion in place, it would be time for the new god to reveal himself. A series of satellites around the planet would be used to project images around the world. The deities from the dominant religions in each area would appear in the sky before forming together into the image of a single god. It would look like the second coming of Christ, but this would actually be the Antichrist. Other technology would be used to speak into the minds of people, convincing them it was their own god talking and telling them the truth. With people around the world unable to explain the strange phenomena, they would be told that this was the real god and form a single one-world religion. Having a single religion would make it easier for the New World Order to control people. A series of devastating natural disasters and epidemics would follow, caused by secret technology developed by the organization. That would cause humanity to believe that only the New World Order, led by the Antichrist, could save them. Monast passed away 2 years after publishing his book on Project Bluebeam. He'd been arrested and spent time in jail. 24 hours after his release, he suffered a heart attack. This incident only led his followers to believe that Monast was telling the truth, and taken out of the way to stop him from revealing anything else. Believers in Project Bluebeam believe it may have already started, pointing to the increase in natural disasters. There are also incidents like the image of a city floating above a town in China. The image was caused by an optical illusion, but conspiracy theorists believe this was just a hologram from Project Bluebeam being trialed. There's no proof that NASA, the UN, or anybody else plans to use holograms to promote the Antichrist, but it is a pretty disturbing theory, even if it doesn't turn out to be true. The phantom time hypothesis is an interesting conspiracy theory, stating that almost 300 years of history never happened. During the European Dark Ages, the rulers of the time came together to jump forward from the 700s to the year 1000 CE, and we've been living with this change ever since. According to the theory, Holy Roman Emperor Otto III and the Pope came together to change the date that they found themselves living in. In conventional history, Otto is understood to have been Holy Roman Emperor between 996 and 1002. He was in control of a huge amount of land in Central Europe, and was arguably the most powerful person on the continent after the Pope. Otto had a very busy reign, including installing 2 popes and having to deal with the rebellion in Italy. But at some point, according to the theory, he came together with Pope Sylvester II to solidify his name in the history books. The problem was he wasn't actually living in the late 990s, according to the theory. Instead, the year was closer to 700. He believed ruling in the year 1000 would be extremely significant, and he conspired with the Pope and other nobles outside his empire to change that date. Given Europe was in the middle of the European Dark Ages at the time, it apparently wasn't hard to convince the people that they were actually living 300 years in the future. The new timeline would follow actual history up until the year 613, then 297 years of fake historical events would be added to the story. What should have been the year 614 then became 912, and real history continued. The period between 614 and 911 in history books is completely fake. The evidence for this theory is largely the lack of evidence that this time period did happen. According to one researcher, there were few significant historical events in that time period, despite that time period including the crowning of Emperor Charlemagne and a number of wars involving the Eastern Roman Empire. He also claims that our dating techniques for what few artifacts we find from that time period are flawed. If this conspiracy theory were true, it would have to go much further than the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope wanting to live in the year 1000. This period included the spread of Islam, given the religion was founded just a few years before the Phantom Time began. But it's possible, but unlikely, that Islamic rulers at the time would have gone along with this conspiracy. But that still wouldn't explain why civilizations in China, the Americas, and Africa also record events during the Phantom period, and why celestial events, like the timings of lunar and solar eclipses, still line up across the world. Last Thursdayism is a relatively simple concept that can be pretty weird to think about too much. The general idea behind Last Thursdayism is that the universe and everything in it was created last Thursday. Of course, most people on the planet will have memories that go back earlier than last Thursday. There are weeks, months, and years of memories that would not have happened if the universe wasn't created yet. But according to the theory, our memories of our lives before last Thursday were simply programmed into us. We remember last Wednesday, for example, because we were told to remember a time before Thursday. The concept originated as a rebuttal to the young Earth creationist theory. This theory, which is held by some groups of Christians as well as people from other religions, holds on to the belief that the world is roughly 6,000 years old, despite geological evidence suggesting otherwise. That was an issue a lot of early geologists came to when trying to understand aspects of our world, like why certain fossils only appeared on the west coast of Africa and the east coast of South America. It wasn't possible for them to hold on to the belief in a young Earth while also maintaining the evidence they had before them. But in 1857, naturalist Philip Henry Goss proposed another option. The world was still as young as the Bible said it was. God simply created it to look ancient. This has also been described as the baby rock theory. God didn't create baby rocks, he created fully formed boulders, mountains, craters, and the like. The Earth was created to already be able to sustain life, essentially jump-starting the planet millions of years. So while the evidence may suggest that the Earth is millions of years old, this theory claims that the evidence was put there by God from the very beginning, so that Earth's natural processes could be understood by scientists in the future. While this theory certainly makes a lot of sense for many Christians, there are some that believe the Earth may have been created as recently as a week ago. This idea fits into the simulation theory. If the world is a simulation, it's possible that the people who designed it wouldn't have needed to witness what happens from the beginning of the universe. They may have simply created the simulation to begin just before what they wanted to witness, and everything else is just programmed in. What makes this theory so creepy is the fact that we have no way to disprove it. Questioning whether we trust our own memories can lead to some more existential questions. The lost cosmonauts theory is a chilling conspiracy theory that dates back to the 1960s. In 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first person to ever enter space. Amazingly, he came back to Earth alive, but according to this theory, Gagarin wasn't the first man in space, just the first one to make it back. There was understandably a lot of skepticism from the general public when the Soviet Union announced Gagarin's success. The country was extremely secretive about its space program, but boasted some big wins in the space race, including the first satellite in space and now the first human. Naturally, people questioned whether Gagarin had really been into space, but the American president confirmed that this had happened. This quieted rumors that Gagarin had never been to space, but there were still people that believed he wasn't the first to go to space. This theory stated that the Soviet Union had had the successes that it boasted, but it had had many more failures than it claimed. As well as the general secrecy surrounding the Soviet space program, and the willingness to disbelieve what was being said, there were a few incidents that helped strengthen the rumor. For example, in March of 1961, only a few weeks before Gagarin's flight, Volunteer rescue teams rushed to a site not far from the city of Perth. A craft had come crashing down, and witnesses saw a figure in an ejector seat parachuting from the capsule. When they arrived at the site, they found a lifeless body, but it was only that of a dummy nicknamed Ivan Ivanovich, which was being used to test microphone and transmission systems. Retellings of this test, coming from non-official sources and reaching the West second or third hand from actual witnesses, may have led to the idea that Ivan Ivanovich was alive when he went up. Then there was a pair of Italian radio enthusiasts who claimed to have listened in on a number of space launches, including launches from the Soviet Union. They listened to a Morse code SOS message coming from a capsule flying away from Earth. The most famous of these radio transmissions allegedly came from a female cosmonaut who described flames surrounding her capsule and asked if she was going to crash. According to the story surrounding this theory, the Soviets later claimed an unmanned satellite had been destroyed in a failed re-entry. While the recordings of the lost cosmonauts are still online, the story has been mostly debunked. The brothers also claimed to have listened to transmissions that would have been impossible for them to detect from their position on Earth. It's known that there were a number of disasters that the Soviet Union tried to cover up during its space program. Those included a rocket being destroyed on a launch pad in 1960, and a cosmonaut losing his life in an isolation test chamber. This man was later airbrushed out of a photograph of a group of cosmonauts, adding to the lost cosmonaut theory. But while there were incidents that the Soviet Union covered up until after its collapse, those incidents happened on Earth. No documents have been found suggesting any secretive manned missions that have gone unreported. A rather unusual conspiracy theory surfaced around 2014 and 2016, during the time that Britons began to cast their ballots on whether or not Britain should leave the European Union. The conspiracy stated that the votes were being tampered with and expressed that the government was changing the votes to be in favor of the Remain option. Those who were promoting this conspiracy theory urged voters to make use of a PIN, as it would make it more difficult for it to be altered. This theory was initially brought up in the 2014 Scottish independence referendum with the Yes voters. In 2016, in the United Kingdom European Union referendum, it was common with the Leave voters. Hashtags were tagged on Twitter posts as #UsePins or #Pencilgate. Pencilgate was another name used to describe the conspiracy. Many of the individuals who were in support of this theory also supported the United Kingdom Independence Party. Theorists were convinced that their votes were being altered by a spy agency known as MI5. The theory expressed that MI5 would erase the pencil marks made by voters and change them to the in favor option. Some individuals had even instructed others to use a pen by writing "Use a pen to vote" on the polling station signs. Once the conspiracy had taken flight, the Electoral Commission had made a point of reassuring the citizens and voters that they could use pens if they wished. A spokesperson maintained that by tradition, pencils were usually available at the booths for voters. The manager of the company that supplied the pencils to these booths was also interviewed, and he stated that there was absolutely nothing special regarding these particular pencils. The theorists were also mocked on social media. One such person was Brian Cox, who made a Twitter post stating, "I voted in pencil, just in case MI5 needed to change it later." A similar conspiracy came about once again in 2020 during the Trump elections. This time, it was nicknamed Sharpiegate. A viral claim began to circulate on Facebook within a few hours of the polls closing in Arizona for the presidential election. The claim stated that some of the ballots that were cast had been filled out using a permanent marker. This type of pen could not be read by the voting machines in Maricopa County. These claims initially started out as a local claim that then became fueled by the posting of videos in which voters were stating that some individuals had used Sharpies and that they had some issues with the votes that were being scanned by the voting machines. These claims then became a statewide conspiracy and are said to have been talked about on various Facebook groups relating to Trump. This conspiracy was not true though, and there was no evidence supporting it. The Arizona officials released confirmation that their machines could in fact read the Sharpie-marked ballots. 15 hours later, this theory became the basis of Trump's allies to call the results from Arizona into doubt. Mark Schlapp, the American Conservative Union chairman, had also tweeted about Sharpiegate, after which Twitter marked the post as false information. The thread was even picked up by Trump's children before it began to pop up on TikTok as well as 4chan. During the impeachment hearings, Trump's lawyer had also grabbed hold of these claims. One caller who called into a radio show had stated that Sharpiegate was the scandal of the century. After this theory had grabbed the attention of government officials, Attorney General Mark Brnovich sent a letter to the Maricopa County Election Department and demanded an account of how the Sharpies were being used in the voting. The conspiracy then spilled over into the rest of the world, and supporters of Donald Trump flooded the streets in protest and demanded a recount of the votes. The director of the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab, Graham Brookie, stated that misinformation such as that of the Sharpie conspiracy focuses on specific areas. He expressed that this is not about a nationwide narrative, but rather it's about individuals who are using localized instances of wrongdoings in order to push an even broader narrative that is to fit in and align with their specific political points of view. In addition to the Sharpiegate theory, the same day influencers had released another misconstructed conspiracy, which stated that poll voters and watchers had been turned away from Pennsylvania poll stations. Another story stated that in Georgia, 2 of the poll workers added an extra 53 votes after the 7 p.m. deadline. The Georgia judge had thrown out this claim due to a lack of evidence and support. Even though these conspiracy theories were continuously debunked, they continued to spread throughout the area. According to another government conspiracy theory, some theorists have suggested and rumored that the government's ruling class is trying to enslave the masses and force them to eat bugs. This theory was sparked on some social media platforms before becoming a national political issue in at least 2 countries. It was stated that elected political officials from the Netherlands as well as Poland had been accusing their opponents of plotting the force-feeding of insects to the citizens. This theory had allegedly made a leap from being a standard meme to real-life politics. In the middle of March, a Dutch parliamentary member named Thierry Baudet had tweeted a post that read, "We will not eat the bugs." This was accompanied by an image of Baudet holding a microphone with one hand, and in the other he held a bag of mealworms which he was pouring out. Earlier on in March, Poland's ruling Nationalist Party had alleged that its opposition, Civic Platform, was trying to get citizens to eat worms, which only caused them to strike back with a rather similar accusation. These are only a few of the instances relating to the European politicians expressing the conspiracy theory that the elite are trying to get people to eat insects. These theories and accusations had also come about after the European Union approved the use of mealworms and crickets in food ingredients. In addition to this, across the Atlantic, some influencers are expressing a similar kind of plot. The United States Food and Drug Administration is also allowing small pieces of insects to be used in food products. In January of 2022, YouTuber Michael Knowles stated that the ruling class is looking to get us to eat insects, waving around a printout of why bugs must be a bigger part of the human food chain. This printout refers to the idea that insects are high in nutrients and can be used in animal feed as well as to process human waste. It was not directed at the citizens actually eating bugs, though it was noted that red dye, E120 used in red juices, and other red-colored foods come from a red insect. In another YouTube video, Aldo Barazzoni was conducting man-on-the-street interviews where he would tell passers-by that the World Economic Forum wants citizens to eat insects in order to save the planet. He took it as far as asking them if they would indulge in some live crickets or bread that was made with cricket flour. The idea of the consumption of insects has slowly been emerging, but in recent years, a strong aversion to this has been sparked by the growing conspiracy theory, which expresses that the global elite are conspiring to control the population of the world, and somehow the consumption of insects fits into that. According to this theory, it's not just about disgust or climate change, but it's also a matter of freedom as well as government control that's fusing this conspiracy together. The earliest notion of this theory began on 4chan in 2019, when an anonymous user repeated the phrase, which had been in response to a picture of Greta Thunberg, which was also paired with another saying which read, "I will not live in a pod." The 2 phrases, "I will not eat bugs" and "I will not live in a pod," then resurfaced on Twitter in September, after a commenter had left a comment on an image that revealed a co-living space that was lined with a bunk bed. The following day, another Twitter user had posted the same phrase in all caps to their 300 followers. Within a day, that particular post had received over 500 likes, and the saying quickly spread. Then a cryptocurrency promoter named Nick Carter had picked up the saying and added it to an image that was titled Climate Solutions. The image had shown a car screeching to the roadside underneath a sign reading "Eat the Bugs." Carter had over 35,000 followers when this post was made. The phrase would then resurface again in the early months of 2020, among the various restrictions that came into play. A year before this, though, the "eat bugs and live in a pod" phrase was used as the title of a short story by a science fiction writer. In the story, Live in the Pod and Eat Bugs, the setting was that of a dystopian world in which the characters were forced to eat insects. A couple of months prior to this, before the Notre Dame Cathedral fire, a blogger had stated that eating bugs was the symbolism of our enslavement. There are many strange conspiracy theories that relate to the royal family, one of which states that the royal wedding was used so that Britain may gain control in America. The Queen was also supposedly a shape-shifting alien, according to one of the more common conspiracy theories. Among these common conspiracy theories involving the elite or ruling classes, the royal family is said to be part of the Illuminati. Princess Diana and Prince Charles are said to have had a secret daughter somewhere along the line. Some theorists have also gone as far as suggesting that Meghan Markle is an apparent secret agent. Another really odd theory stated that Queen Elizabeth I was the true author of the Shakespearean works. Queen Victoria's grandson is also believed to be Jack the Ripper. One of the more interesting and strange of these conspiracy theories is that of Prince Charles. A plethora of supposed evidence has convinced many theorists that Prince Charles of the royal family is actually a vampire. The prince is said to be related to Vlad the Impaler, who was a 13th century ruler. Vlad was the inspiration behind Bram Stoker's Dracula. In addition to this, Charles's bloodline is said to suffer from a disease known as porphyria, which is a type of iron deficiency that causes the host to be sensitive to sunlight. The story of this theory began with Prince Charles's relative, Vlad. In 1448, Vlad III had claimed the Roman Empire's throne, and due to the cruel treatment he would inflict upon his enemies, he would soon become known as Vlad the Impaler. It's believed that author Bram Stoker used this individual as his inspiration for Dracula. As we all know, the story is set in the hills of Transylvania, in the eastern area of Romania. In 1998, Charles had come to learn through his great-grandmother that he in fact had a relation to Vlad. Charles is said to be Vlad's great-grandson 16 times removed. There's a 16-generational difference between the prince and the Impaler. Charles is also fond of his lineage and promotes Transylvania as a tourist attraction, and even received the title Prince of Transylvania. The prince is also said to own many properties within the Romanian region, and often goes there on vacation. The aforementioned disease, known as porphyria, is said to run rampant in the royal family, and is a rather serious iron deficiency that's also nicknamed the vampire disease. Those who find themselves suffering from this disease are incredibly sensitive to sunlight, which can even result in blistering after sun exposure. And as far as the general idea of vampires goes, they can only come out at night. Black helicopters refers to a conspiracy theory suggesting that UN forces are going to arrive in black helicopters in order to bring the United States under their control. A similar theory called phantom helicopters also began to emerge in England during the 1970s. The idea of these black and phantom helicopters may have been sparked by the Hal Lindsey book titled The Late, Great Planet Earth, which had started to become rather popular among the conspiracy theorists during that time. In this book, Lindsey speculates that the creatures that were mentioned in the New Testament's book of Revelations are in fact helicopters. It's suggested that John had never seen a helicopter before and didn't know how else to describe what he had witnessed. It was found that Jim Keith had also written and published 2 books relating to the black helicopters over America, one of which is titled Strike Force for the New World Order, and another called Black Helicopters 2, The Endgame Strategy. These 2 books were published in 1995 and 1998. In 1995, Helen Chenoweth, a northern Idaho congressman, accused agents of landing black helicopters on Idaho rancher property in order to enforce the Endangered Species Act. During this year, the attention on his helicopters began to rise. Chenoweth claimed that she had never seen them, but that individuals within her district have become concerned with these sightings so much that she's unable to ignore them. The theory goes in hand with the idea that UN forces will invade the United States of America. This claim was initially supported by the John Birch Society, which maintained that the UN would be arriving in the US to exert control over the citizens. There are a few organizations, as well as government agencies, which do operate black or unmarked helicopters. The use of such vehicles remains classified. 2 of the black and gold UH-60 Blackhawk helicopters are used by the United States Customs and Border Protection. The United States Army's 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment is said to use black helicopters as well, while other branches make use of darkly painted helicopters, such as the Sikorsky MH-53. This vehicle is said to be used for search and rescue, as well as in combat. It's claimed that the Army conducts special exercises and missions in the airspace of places such as New York, Detroit, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Washington. These helicopters are said to be frequently used, and they'll often be witnessed by the concerned citizens. It's maintained that these darkly painted vehicles are nothing more than helicopters used for security and other operations, also relating to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But this is not enough to satisfy the conspiracy theorists, who fully believe that forces are on their way to take over America. With so many conspiracy theories going around, the one concerning the black helicopters is among the most searched by Californians. Theorists seem to tie the concept of the phantom helicopters to the New World Order conspiracy. These theorists believe that helicopters are being used to spy on the citizens all around the globe. While this conspiracy has supposedly been debunked, theorists are not so convinced of their safety regarding these helicopters. These sightings have been linked to UFOs and UAPs by theorists, and some even believe that they could be of alien origin. The New World Order conspiracy theory is one that fits all of the politics into one scenario, which is that there's a class of elite individuals who are in the process of conjuring up a plan to take over the world. It was confirmed that some theorists, or most of them, fear that there's an elite group that will soon dominate the world. This is only supported by the many more theories that have risen since the sightings of unmarked helicopters. While there exist a few theories relating to the New World Order, there are 3 of them that stood out the most and appear to be the most significant, one of which was that of the black helicopter conspiracy. The sightings of the helicopters provide evidence for this theory. Another theory suggests that there's a network of concentration camps that are in the process of being readied, while another conspiracy relates to the idea that mind control has been developed by this organization. Theorists believe that mind control will be used to make the masses more docile. It was found in psychosocial studies that people who follow these conspiracies may do so for a few different reasons. Whether it's the black helicopters or the CIA's mind control, the followers of such theories do have reasons behind them. It's believed that the effort made by our memories might affect how we process such theories. Our senses are said to bring in around 1 million bits of data per second, most of which we reject. The amount of extra information that we take in, such as one incredibly ridiculous conspiracy theory, tends to overload our brain's capacity. Cognitive studies have shown that information overloading traits are rather similar to attention deficit disorders. The researcher Linda Stone found that the overload can also result in continuous partial attention. This is said to increase stress and ultimately decrease filtering. Stress is the activator for fear, which centers in the mind and uses up the parts responsible for navigating and planning. Along with the combination of reduced filtering and increased stress, along with the desire to understand, makes it all the more difficult to process information rationally. Planet Nibiru is said to be a planet that some theorists claim will collide with Earth, but there's no evidence that supports the existence of this rogue planet, which is said to have been referred to as Planet X. It was believed that the collision would have happened back in 2012, but this of course did not happen. This planet has also been linked to NASA by some theorists, which encouraged the agency officials to relay a statement that claimed a planet was not on its way to destroy the Earth. The whole theory started all the way back in 1976, when the author, Zecharia Sitchin, wrote a book called The 12th Planet. The book made use of Sitchin's own translation of Sumerian cuneiform in order to identify a planet called Nibiru, which orbited the Sun every 3,600 years. Sitchin's book was based on ancient Sumerian writing of a giant planet. Years later, a supposed psychic named Nancy Leiter had claimed that aliens had warned her that this particular planet could collide with Earth in the year 2003. 2003 came and went, and the date was moved up to 2012. It was here that it was linked with the close of the Mayan long count period. In 2011, a comet named Comet Elenin appeared, which made many theorists concerned that this was the planet that had come to destroy Earth. But instead, the comet had broken into pieces and would go on its path in the outer solar system for at least another 12,000 years. While there are many visible astronomical signs that would warn us of an incoming planet, conspiracy theorists stuck with this theory. Of course, the world ending is nothing new, and that's been going on for decades. But with the addition of the internet, such rumors can spread even quicker and instill fear into the public. While the idea of Nibiru may seem far-fetched, there may actually be some hidden world beyond our solar system that's gone undiscovered. This planet has been named Planet 9, but could very well be the planet that the aliens and Sitchin were talking about. Evidence of this planet has been building for quite some time. Astronomers like Mike Brown, Scott Shepard, Chad Trujillo, and Konstantin Batygin have come to notice a cluster of small objects orbiting beyond Neptune. Researchers suggest that this could be an unseen perturbation. It was estimated that this planet might be one about 10 times the size of Earth and orbit the Sun 600 times further from the Sun. It's noted that this planet is named Planet 9 because if it were to be spotted, then it would be the replacement for Pluto as the 9th planet. Some scientists and researchers do still regard Pluto as the 9th planet, and so the undiscovered world can also sometimes be referred to as Planet X. This may cause confusion because Planet X was also the name given to the objects which orbited Uranus and Neptune. While Planet 9 or Planet X may exist, it's said that it will not be colliding with our Earth anytime soon. While the existence of Nibiru may be denied by conspiracy theorists, it does not mean that a planet like that won't be discovered at some point in time. Astronomers are able to identify and see oddities many years before they can come anywhere near our planet. Theories of this nature may have also been sparked off by books or movies as well. A year before the theorized supposed planet collision, a movie named Melancholia was released. A new planet was discovered in this movie and slowly began to approach Earth. It's possible that this only instilled more fear and supported the conspiracy theories that suggested the world would come to an end in 2012. According to a planetary astronomer at NASA, Ames Research Center, and a senior scientist at the Astrobiology Institute, David Morrison, there are over 2 million websites that discuss the impending collision of Nibiru. Morrison expressed that he receives somewhere around 5 emails a day with inquiries about Nibiru. The astronomer revealed that he'd received a message from a young individual who was extremely concerned about the impending doom and that they felt mentally ill because of it. Additionally, historians as well as language scholars have both expressed that Sitchin had mistranslated these ancient texts. Millions of copies of this book were made and sold worldwide, only adding or even causing fear of the impending Earth-Nibiru collision. Initially, the biggest missing link of this giant planetary collision was that no such planet had been discovered. But based on the aforementioned more recent discovery of a possible giant planet somewhere far beyond, such a conspiracy theory may soon take off once again. Having a large planet hurtling toward Earth at a rapid speed would certainly be a terrifying and disturbing ordeal. During the 19th century, the temperance movement was making waves in the United States. The movement was made up mostly of women who'd become fed up with their husbands drinking to excess and treating them badly while intoxicated. The temperance movement hadn't always advocated for the prohibition of alcohol, and up until the 19th century, its members simply wanted stricter regulations surrounding alcohol and its sale. By the 20th century, the temperance movement had caught on, and now people all across the United States were calling for the prohibition of alcohol. By 1919, the US government passed the 18th Amendment, which prohibited the manufacture, transportation, and sale of alcohol. The decade-long period known as Prohibition in American history had officially begun. Of course, not everyone was happy with the outcome, and Prohibition was met with backlash. Distillers and bar owners were angry at the government as they felt that they'd been left out to dry without any help. Undeterred, these bar owners and distilleries simply took their business underground, opening up what were known as speakeasies. Prohibition didn't put an end to the transportation or sale of alcohol, and law enforcement found themselves fighting a new battle. With demand rising, organizations like the Mafia quickly jumped at the chance to import alcohol and sell it to speakeasies at an inflated price. Law enforcement quickly caught on to this. However, instead of pooling all of their resources into getting boots on the ground, they had a different tactic. Officials soon implemented a new rule stating that toxic substances must be added to products that could be used to turn them into moonshine. Theories were beginning to circulate among the general public who sensed that something wasn't quite right with the moonshine they were consuming. A New York Times article written in 1927 reported that 41 people had died from alcohol-related poisonings on New Year's Day alone just at one hospital in New York. It turns out that the conspiracy theories were true. Not only had the government mandated the tainting of industrial alcohols since 1906, but they'd amped this up during Prohibition. Since 1906, the government made companies denature their alcohol to ensure it couldn't be used. Then, during the Prohibition, the government forced companies to add a type of methyl alcohol and other hazardous substances to their products to either put people off or prevent them from using them entirely. As far as we know, this simply didn't work, and speakeasies and moonshiners continued to flourish, even though they were using poisoned supplies. By the time the 18th Amendment had been repealed in 1933, over 10,000 are estimated to have died as a result of tainted alcohol. On August 2, 1964, the USS Maddox was hit by two North Vietnamese torpedo boats. The USS Maddox was stationed in the Gulf of Tonkin in North Vietnam, keeping an eye on the rising tensions between a local communist area and the government. The country was now divided into North and South, and as tensions rose, the world looked on in horror. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy requested a full report on the situation in South Vietnam. The result of this report was that President Kennedy was advised to send troops into South Vietnam to help them ward off the communist invasion. Kennedy ultimately turned this plan down, but did agree to send money to South Vietnamese forces, but fiercely rejected the notion that we should wage a full-on invasion with the US Army. Following President Kennedy's assassination, which is another conspiracy in itself, Lyndon B. Johnson took over and increased the military presence in Vietnam. Tensions were steadily rising, with the world left wondering what would happen next. They came to a head on August 2, 1964, when Johnson announced that the USS Maddox had been hit by torpedoes. He would make another statement 2 days later, claiming that the USS Maddox had been hit again, and confirmed that their attackers were none other than the North Vietnamese. This news spurred Congress into action, and they passed a resolution that allowed the government to take all necessary measures. In 1965, the United States were officially at war with Vietnam, but it had all been a lie. The attack, which was described as unprovoked, had mostly been fabricated to rush through the authorization to get boots on the ground in Vietnam. For decades, this remained a conspiracy theory as two countries engaged in a back-and-forth blame, with the United States proclaiming that the USS Maddox had been struck twice and that their intervention was necessary. It wasn't until 2005 that the truth about this conspiracy was finally uncovered. In all, over 200 documents were released, including phone transcripts, interviews, and reports from 1964. These documents confirmed what conspiracy theorists had thought all along, that the United States government used these attacks, or lack thereof, to inject themselves into the Vietnam War. It's widely believed that although there was a miscommunication in reporting the incidents, the United States government did little to contest this and used any piece of evidence they could to go to war. Conspiracy theories, fake news, and media manipulation are nothing new. Modern technology makes it easier for groups to spread false narratives and manipulate facts, but this was something that the US government had been involved in decades previously. Created by the CIA in the 1950s, Operation Mockingbird set out to influence the United States media by bribing and sometimes even forcing journalists to write stories that fit the government's narrative. During World War II, the US was plunged deep into the Cold War against the USSR. Although there was no official war or fighting, the Cold War is perhaps one of the scariest times in modern history. For the world, the threat of all-out nuclear war was very real, and the United States were not about to lose to the Soviets. In an attempt to rally the American people against the Soviets and steer them into opposing communism altogether, the CIA established. Director Frank Wisner was told, quote, to concentrate on propaganda, economic warfare, preventative action including sabotage, anti-sabotage, demolition and evacuation measures, subversion against hostile states, and to support anti-communist elements in threatened countries of the free world. It wasn't just the US that the CIA managed to influence with Operation Mockingbird. They quickly expanded their reach into Europe, seeking out prize-winning journalists to help them further their agenda. It's estimated that over $1 billion was bumped into Operation Mockingbird each year, and for those who cooperated, they were paid handsomely for their work. People were quickly becoming skeptical of the constant bombardment of propaganda, and soon theories began popping up that the government were somehow involved in influencing the media. The theory was disproven for years, until 1977, when Carl Bernstein published an article in the Rolling Stone titled, quote, "The CIA and the Media." In his article, Bernstein detailed how the CIA had hired journalists to spread fake news, and that even some of these journalists had gone undercover in communist countries to gather intelligence. Following the involvement of the Church Committee, the CIA admitted to manipulating the American press, and admitted to distorting information to fit their agenda. In a 1956 report, the CIA wrote, quote, "The CIA currently maintains a network of several hundred foreign individuals around the world who provide intelligence for the CIA and at times attempt to influence opinion through the use of covert propaganda. These individuals provide the CIA with direct access to a large number of newspapers, scores of press services and news agencies, radio and television stations, commercial book publishers, and other foreign media outlets." The 1947 Roswell crash is one of, if not the most, infamous cases of a supposed alien landing on Earth. For decades, believers in aliens and UFOs have touted conspiracy theories about Roswell to claim that aliens did indeed make contact with humans, and that the US government had been keeping it all a secret. Soon after the news broke of a supposed alien crash landing in Roswell, New Mexico, the RAAF released a statement saying, quote, "The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the Sheriff's Office of Chaves County." This statement sent shockwaves through the country, and also the world, with conspiracy theorists elated that their suspicions had been confirmed. In their eyes, this was solid proof that the US government had discovered an alien spaceship. Just days later, the US Army released their own statement, which heavily refuted the flying saucer claims from days ago. Realizing the mass panic and trouble they had unknowingly caused, the US Army declared that the debris found at Roswell was nothing more than a weather balloon that had gone astray. In the eyes of the US Army, they'd squashed any conspiracy theories, and Roswell would be forgotten about sooner or later. But conspiracy theorists did not buy the story one bit. For decades, believers put pressure on the US government and conducted independent investigations into Roswell, claiming that the incident and weather balloon story had all been one big cover-up because the US government didn't want its citizens to know the truth. In a way, the conspiracy theorists were right. In 1994, the US Air Force released a report where they admitted that the weather balloon story had been a lie. The report states that the debris was from a spy device that had been used in Project Mogul, which sought to spy on the Soviets and monitor all of their activities surrounding their testing of the atomic bomb. The report is available to read in its entirety on the NSA's website, and here's an excerpt from it. Quote, "The research located no records at existing Air Force offices that indicated any cover-up by the USAF or any indication of such a recovery. Consequently, efforts were intensified by the US Air Force researchers at numerous locations where records for the period in question were stored. The records reviewed did not reveal any increase in operations, security, or any activity in July of 1947 that indicated any such unusual event may have occurred. Records were located and thoroughly explored concerning the then top-secret balloon project, designed to attempt to monitor Soviet nuclear tests, known as Project Mogul. Even though the United States Army made a full report debunking the initial stories about the Roswell crash, conspiracy theorists are still convinced that a wide-scale cover-up is in full effect. Many do not believe the weather balloon or Project Mogul story, and believe this is yet another attempt at deflecting attention away from the real findings. In September of 1919, then-President Woodrow Wilson suffered a mini stroke, which was attributed to stress and overworking himself as he'd been traveling around the United States, giving speeches to citizens and rallying support for the League of Nations. In April of 1919, Wilson was struck down with an almost fatal case of influenza, which at the time was a worldwide pandemic. Doctors, physicians, and even his wife pleaded with him to rest and recuperate, but Wilson didn't listen to any of them. Instead, he carried on and continued with his speeches and important political work. This, of course, had a huge negative impact on his health, and as the months went on, his health deteriorated. Finally, in September, the stress caught up with him, and he was struck down with a mini stroke. Unable to continue, Wilson went back to Washington, D.C. and was ordered to rest, but the damage had already been done. Weeks later, he suffered another stroke, which left him partially paralyzed. Not wanting to alarm the public, Wilson kept up appearances and made it look like he was running the show from Washington, D.C., while recovering from what was described as a nervous reaction in his digestive organs. He even appeared at meetings covered with a blanket to hide the fact that he was paralyzed on one side, but those who were present knew something was very wrong. Wilson's wife, Edith, was instrumental in keeping the White House running and made sure that he was able to complete his day-to-day duties as president. Although theories began popping up that Edith was in fact the one calling the shots from behind the scenes. Edith took over duties behind the scenes without so much as telling the American public what was happening. News had already broken about his stroke, however, they had no idea that Edith was now the one in charge. This was confirmed in 1938 when Edith wrote an autobiography titled My Memoir. In it, she wrote, quote, "So began my stewardship. I studied every paper, sent from different secretaries or senators, and tried to digest and present in tabloid form the things that, despite my vigilance, had to go to the president. Historians are continuing their search for further evidence that Edith was doing more behind the scenes than she first let on, with many saying that she acted as the nation's chief executive until Wilson died in 1921. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.